Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Pagano, and I'm the CEO for Hera Media Group. And today I'm doing an interview with a really interesting woman, and her work that she does is fascinating. You're going to love it. So Carinda Salomon, and I'm going to let her introduce herself because she's so way cool, and I don't want to upset exactly who she is and what she's doing in the world. So Carinda, thank you for being here today. So introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Carinda Salomon. I am a behavior consultant, a human behavior consultant. I work with individuals to primarily focus on removing their subconscious bias. We use tools that corporations, experts, institutions, even lawyers have used for the last decade. I mean, for 20 years, they've used these. Actually, longer than that, they've used it since the 20s. To really look and pull the information on what triggers someone, when it triggers them, and how, because it's really difficult to put everyone in a certain box. Definitely, I'm not for everybody for sure, because it's a little bit of an outside of the box type of thinking that goes into it.
Carinda, I love what you do. I love what you do. And I remember when I first met you, we met at the Lake Nona Impact Forum in Orlando, which is such a great event. And the thing that when we were at dinner and you were talking about, I was like, oh my God, she's studying my face. She knows exactly who I am before I even speak a word.
And you understand so much about people. It makes it to where you're so open, because you understand, you expect exactly what you're going to get. And yeah, it's fascinating. I love looking at people's face. I love helping them figure out what's in their way of getting past their boundaries. What's in the way of this obstacle? What's stopping you? That's what I love to focus on.
Oh, love it. So I've got a few questions for you, right? So, so we can learn more about you and your work. Can you tell us about your work in identifying subconscious biasness and self-awareness? What are they? And how did you become interested in this topic?
How I became interested in this topic is a really long story. I had studied, micromimics for 20 years, MBTI, additional body language, NLP, vocal linguistics, and all while I was in the business setting, advising startups, advising investors, and it really those helped me understand how they're communicating, how to get them past the fact that they're saying the exact same thing, but it's just a lot of crosstalk. And then I was approached and introduced to face reading profiling, and I thought, wow, okay, this is the missing piece, because it's not just one of them that works. You have to put them all together. And when you put them all together, you can have a really in-depth view of, we call it a mindscape. It's kind of like a landscape of your subconscious mind. So you can understand where are the barriers, what happens when you get triggered, and how you react. And some of those subconscious barriers, I mean, it could be anything as confirmation bias. Our subconscious tends to approve of things we've already confirmed and know to be true, which is a very simple bias, but it affects every decision that you make. It affects everything that you do. So yeah, if you're recognizing the fact that you're doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're eating the same meal at the restaurant over and over and over, recognize that might just be a little bit of confirmation bias. It's not that you're closed-minded. It's not that you don't want to open up. It's not that you don't want to try new things. Maybe you're just hung up in that loop. So, try to recognize it. Once you recognize it and plant that seed, your brain just starts working on its own. And it happens really fast. It happens really fast.
Yeah, it really does. When I was in the tech world and working with people all over the world, and I could see my biases flare up, and I'd have to just stop myself and not prejudge and not pre-assume, although you're in a situation where you have to make decisions fast based on who you're talking to, and it can be a helpful tool sometimes, but you're absolutely right, because people can really surprise you, that even though you're thinking this, it isn't that, but it is. But I totally get it. So another question I have for you, in your opinion, how does biased self-awareness contribute to the broader societal issues that we see today?
Oh, wow. Really cool study that I just read. Actually, I read it yesterday. And it was about what happened during COVID and the authority bias from people on social media. The fear that was subconscious that a lot of people didn't understand, but when the rug is pulled out from underneath you, fear sets in. So when you have the authority bias, you attach on to one person who you feel is your authority, and you don't budge, not because you agree with what they say, not because you're really, a lot of people didn't even pay attention, but that was who they listened to from the beginning. That process made everything okay. So the authority bias wouldn't even let them hear another side, wouldn't even let them acknowledge the fact that potentially another side existed, whatever side they were on. It was both sides were doing it, it was really yeah, authority bias. That's an interesting one.
Wow. And it is definitely, at least in America, I mean, it's a real challenge, is that people aren't listening to each other.
Right. Right. There's so much information out there. There's so much noise. And when our attention span is getting shorter and we're skimming and we're looking online and we're only seeing the high level, then we're attached to an authority bias, then our confirmation bias kicks in because they're agreeing with what we already know. Well, sometimes, I mean, I'm wrong. I've been wrong quite a bit in my life. I mean, everybody has at a certain point. So when you get in those loops and you can't figure out what it is, you defend it because you believe it's you.
Mm.
And it's not. It is you. You're just stuck in a loop. And like I said, it's like a weight is lifted off once you understand how you consume information. That was a big changing point for me.
Yeah. Well, there's so much misinformation out there. That's
Yeah.
making it very hard and difficult for people to know what is the truth and what is a lie.
Right. And a lot of people in this world aren't born with the inherent tendency to actually go into the details and to look and see. So their brain relies heavily on these shortcuts that it creates by using these biases, because it's got the body through and it's still alive, right?
Yeah.
Everything that is predicted has worked out successfully. So yeah, you just have to address them.
So how do you manage those loops? What do people do next when you
Well, that's a really good question. So in the system, I developed a system called pattern points, and we can actually tailor the individual systems to the person and how they consume information. That's the first point that we start, because the way you consume information and your perception is the basis of everything. That's where it all starts. That's where the subconscious brain gets the information to start making the predictions. So when you can get into the point of, okay, it is your authority bias. This is what it is, because you're an emotional person. So you have an emotional attachment to the things you understand. And then you can literally start listing them out. It really acts as a guide. The facial reading profiling system that we have actually acts as a guide for me. It creates a landscape and allows me to attach, what is attached to those biases that trigger you when an event happens.
Right. Very interesting. I got another question here for you. What are some of the most common challenges you encounter when working with individuals or organizations to address subconscious biases, and how do you navigate these challenges?
Some of the most interesting experiences I have had is when you bring up anything that has to do with narcissism or microaggressions. Those two things nobody wants to hear. And the fact of the matter is, we all have narcissistic tendencies. We all have that shadow side of us. It's a pendulum. We go from one side to the other. And so it's not figuring out what you have, it's why do you have it? What triggers that? Is it because of an emotional attachment? Is it because of your, inability to accept failure or loss? All of those things play in to our reactions and ultimately our behavior patterns and become our perception.
So what techniques or methodologies do you use to help individuals become more aware of their subconscious biases, and how effective have these techniques been in practice?
Well, we do a few different things. Some of my clients, we've worked on just recording them during a conversation kind of like this, and then letting them watch it and see what they do with their hands, see what they do with their bodies, see what they do with their face, and really look at themselves and start going into who they are. Because I can analyze somebody all day long. People can analyze people all day, but the fact of the matter is that 95% of that, unless you understand it, happens in your subconscious brain. So if you're doing it, you can be about 60% right about 20% of the time. So really pointing out and creating the mind scope for the individual and having them be able to understand that it comes from an emotional place, or it comes from a rational place, or it comes from a desire to not lose. It comes from a desire to have money. All of those things count. But when you bring up narcissism, when you bring up microaggressions, people always tend to get very offensive, no matter who they are. It's one of those things that just affects and pulls it out of everyone. So we've developed some systems for that and some communication styles for that over the years. But navigating the clashing personalities is really sitting them down and explaining them to each other, or at least explaining one-to-one and saying but you have to acknowledge your participation in the event. You have to acknowledge your reaction, and your reaction to their rationale came from an emotional place. So explaining that, you can reprogram the brain. Because now you have a track, you have something that it allows you to forgive yourself, really, because you understand that it's not coming from a place that you consciously created. It's coming from a blind spot inside of us all. We all have it. Yeah, I think the last study said only 5 to 10% of the population is inherently born with it. So there's 85%, 95% of the population running around. We're not alone. I mean, there's plenty of people that have the same exact issues.
Wow. Be nice. Is this taught in schools?
Actually, in the 1920s, it was taught at UCLA. There was a Dr. Edward Vincent Jones. He was a judge, and he taught it in the 1920s. In fact, the practices are still some of the basic practices that they teach in law schools around the world today. In French universities, it is taught. In fact, the face reading profiling system is initiated when someone wants to have major facial reconstructive surgery, because they want them to understand what is going to happen with their brain when they see their own reflection in the mirror, because we make a subconscious judgment on people within 35 milliseconds. That is so fast, you have no idea that it's even happening. That happens to your face in the mirror every day. Your brain does not know it's your face until it recognizes it, because our brains are just programmed to recognize faces. So every time you make a change to your nose, noses are one of the biggest things, because that's central and the highest point of your face. So your brain has a reaction to it. So in France, they require at a certain point that you see someone to explain what's going to happen, so that you don't have any type of, manic reaction to what you're saying. Even though you might like the results, your brain might be a tad bit confused subconsciously.
Wow. I can tell you some mornings I wake up and look at myself and I go, who was that?
Right. I've gotten to where I can look at myself so much throughout the day, and I'm like, okay, this eye, I've got this wrinkle on this eye. What's going on that I need to resolve? And you can really just figure it out and resolve it really quickly without dealing with it. That's one of the best things about learning these different systems and being able to pay attention to them, is that you can start identifying your own issues really, really quick.
Wow. Well, what a What a skill and talent.
Right. And you can learn it.
Oh, good. I'm going to have you teach me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're doing, in fact, I was going to do an open Q&A in the next week or so online. So I'll send you an invitation to.
Absolutely. Let us know.
Yeah.
We will share it so other people can join, because I totally love what you're doing and how you're going about this. I got a couple other questions for you. How can promoting unbiased self-awareness help individuals and organizations to create more diverse and inclusive environments? And what are some specific examples of how this can be achieved? And can technology help?
Technology can help. That's a huge part of what we do. There's an AI system attached to the back end. Another long story. There's some more information on my website about it. But one of the things that is the biggest driver in corporations right now is developing human-centric modeling, which means focusing on the human as much as you focus on the numbers. Employee retention is a huge issue. Even now, burning through individuals, people trying to figure out what they want, quiet quitting. I mean, we hear about all of this stuff until you can't hear about it anymore. And when companies employ some type of the human-centric training where people can grow, they've learned that if people can feel like they are growing, either it can be personally or professionally, they will be much more loyal to an organization. But people don't want just the organizations to grow anymore. They want to get more out of their job. So instituting practices that, like this, like go in and explain, how you consume information, explain to people why they're not doing so well in an open room office. They might just need to go over to a little bit of a cubicle, for 3 or 4 hours and take a break from all of the static, or all of the dynamic. So yeah, focusing on the humans and really nurturing them, that's going to be huge for corporations over the next year to retain anyone, because there's so many opportunities out there for everyone right now to make money, side hustles, gigs. I mean, you name it, you can sign up for it, wrap your car in a plastic sign and you can make money. So yeah, retention is going to be big, and the human-centric dimension is what they're going to need to focus on.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. And I've also noticed too that people, to add to that, I think to make sure that they have a mission, that they feel like they're really contributing to something more important than themselves and just making profit for a company.
Absolutely. They need a purpose. And working to live is not a purpose, working to live. What? I just got that so backwards in my own head. You work to live, you don't live to work. Oh, okay.
Exactly. That is what Hera is about. That's what Hera City is about as well, right?
Right.
We put humanity first, and the quality of living, healthfully and happily is more important than just slugging away at a job 24/7.
Absolutely. And again, social media kind of ushered that in and technology ushered that in with all of the new, job opportunities and the ability to work remote and do all of these things sideways. So, institutions like businesses like Hera, what you're doing, getting the messages out there about how to find your purpose, how to find your goal, how to figure out how to navigate this life as happily as you can, and more importantly, fulfilled.
Exactly. There's a lot of work to be done on this planet, and also with humanity. So if we're all helping each other, right, to live the best life ever, right, then
Exactly. And if you, one of the things that we understood when we utilized the system with children and explained to children, 7, 8 years old, what their differences were, we very quickly realized that bullying went away. We very quickly realized that rather than tear each other down, they were very quick to build each other up because they knew how. Tearing someone down is very easy. Everyone knows how. But when the children understood that one student wasn't good at math, then the minute anybody made fun of him for the wrong answer in class, kids are mean. Other kids backed him up and said, yeah, but you're not good at reading. Huh. And so it just quit everything. So really bringing that aspect of openness to inclusion and diversity and working together as a community for a purpose is where I hope society heads. I'm trying to do my part to head that way.
Absolutely, Corinda. I still love what you're doing. And you're right. I mean, and sometimes I feel like children learn bullying from adults. And, and sometimes people use slight humor to affect someone in a negative way. And I've seen it in corporate America so
Yes.
much and in the working environment. And you're right. I mean, you're not one person is good at everything, and we all have skills. We all have talent, and it's a matter of collaborating and utilizing the best talent of everybody to move forward.
Absolutely. We need everybody. There is not one face that is better than the other. There is not one face that is good and one face that is bad. So when people are like, oh, can you tell me? They're always handing me pictures and saying, so tell me, is he bad? It's like, okay, the question is, what would make him be bad? That's the question, because anybody is capable of anything. So it's not, would he be untrustworthy? Why would he be untrustworthy? And when we do deception detection, okay, yes, he is deceiving you. We know he's lying, but the question is why? It's not the fact that he is, it's why. What would make people do that? Those kinds of things are the practices that hopefully can help us tap into some subconsciousness and remove some bias real quick.
Yeah. Well, I love the conversation we had the other day when you talked about wrinkles on children's, forehead that tell they're in a state of trauma. I mean, that to me, I just think for every school on the planet to be able to recognize children that are in trouble at such an early age would be just, so important.
Absolutely. And it's not that you don't even have to go into any real major data collection. Most of this, we were talking to one architecture firm, a security architecture firm with a school, and they are already recording kids. They're recording it from the time you get onto the gate. Today, in this day and age, they really kind of have to. Societies back them in a wall. And if they had the ability to say, even just this child has XYZ wrinkle, pull him in, find out what's going on. Just initiate contact. Connection stops so much depression, burnout, psychotic. You can do so much with just the connection of knowing that someone cares. Just that someone see that you are seen, you are heard.
Yes. Oh my
That's
gosh.
a big deal.
And isn't that what social media is all about? People want to be heard. They want to be, counted, and that their opinion means something. And
Exactly. Everybody's got an opinion. And it's everywhere.
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Okay, another question for you. What actionable steps can individuals or organizations take today to leverage unbiased self-awareness in their efforts to promote inclusion and diversity in a rapidly changing social climate and cultural landscape?
Well, it comes back to really focusing on the human dimension as much as they focus on the numbers. That's one of the things when I've advised venture funds and investors is to really focus on not only what are the financial returns, what's going to happen when something goes wrong. What's going to happen at 2:00 on a Tuesday when everything fails and you were just gone to get coffee. Those are the kinds of things, really paying attention, even implementing like an MBTI or a Strengths Finders 2.0. Those are great observant ways of seeing how people see each other, where they see each other. Team building is great. However, building trust doesn't necessarily mean falling off and landing in people's arms.
Yeah.
I've done those kinds of team building and it didn't necessarily bring me closer to them. It brought me to a different place. And I've more people that I've talked to, I'm not alone in that. I know. So really figuring out how to train the the employees and the staff in communication and how they can speak to each other and how they can really talk with each other instead of to each other is so important. Active listening,
Yeah.
big deal, you know? So even instituting these things that literally, I mean, programs like mine, there's a lot of different ways to do it out there, but programs like mine, 15 minutes twice a week, it's all you really need. And yeah, you can increase your productivity by 25% in like 3 days. You don't have to wait weeks. You don't have to wait months, and you don't have to change every freaking thing about who you are. You can repurpose some of it. We're repurposing everything else. Let's repurpose some of our triggers. You know, let's harness them, turn them into electricity, and do something good with them.
It's a great idea. We're all good enough at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody. There is not one person that's on this planet that is not necessary. There's not one person that is on this planet that is not capable. I mean, I look at faces all the time. I love it. But looking at different faces, and you see someone like Meryl Streep, and then you look at someone that looks just like her, does all the same things that she does, but has zero aspect of Meryl Streep's life. You know, the same with Obama. There's a few people that look really similar to him, definitely not that area. So how do you put people into a place where they succeed more than they fail? Because for me, I failed every time I tried to go to university. I mean, like, I was great at the subjects I love. Everything else, I failed miserably. I mean, just absolutely miserably, because I wasn't connected to it. Had I
Right.
known then how I really consume information, totally different story. I mean, I'm kind of happy I didn't, because I appeared where I am, but it would have helped me not to have to swim with so many sharks for survival.
No, I get it. I get it. You know, we all have a gift. We're all brilliant. And it's a matter of honing in on the things that are near and dear to your heart, what appeals to you, and being an expert at it. But
Yeah.
sometimes people, you got to try everything on. You got to do everything and try everything and be open and available to look at everything. And just because you're not good at one thing doesn't mean that you're not excellent in another. So it's
Well, absolutely. Like when I have someone who says, I'm having trouble meditating, or I can't meditate, because a lot of people, especially in this day and age with the time span the way it is, a lot of people have that issue. And so when you're able to identify those triggers, you can start listening to brown noise, and really, get your mind into a place for 30 seconds. That's all it takes to calm your brain down.
it's a
So
brown noise. It's brown
brown
noise.
noise. Yeah. Have you heard about white noise? So
Yeah.
everybody hears about white noise. So there's pink noise, there's gray noise, there's green noise, there's red, there's so many different kinds of noise. But when you have someone who's hypersensitive to stimuli, white noise increases that hypersensitivity because of the level where it's at, because of the hertz that it's at. Brown noise is a little bit lower, more like an air conditioner or an airplane. Like in an airplane, I fall right to sleep. Why? Brown noise.
Interesting.
It just puts me right to sleep. So even listen to that for even 10 seconds, and you can just get on YouTube and search brown noise. I mean, there's so many different tracks out there. Listen to it for just a minute, get your head in a space, and even start meditating with the brown noise on, and see where it goes from there. Listen to guided meditation, but you have to get your space centered. You can't just jump in and say, oh, I'm going to meditate. Some people can. I can't. I'm too much of a thinker. I can't. I'm in my head all the time.
Yeah, I got monkeys dancing around in my head. So my sister wants to make sure I ask you this question. She said, have Carinda talk about the triangle of sadness.
Oh, the triangle of sadness. I think she's referring to the dark triad,
Okay.
which is where I sit, but that's with the narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So that's where you can get caught if you get caught in a loop, especially of comparison, which a lot of people do, i.e. social media. You
Yeah.
can get caught in this comparative loop, which constantly brings up all of the various traits which are in the dark triad. And they start creating a cyclical sadness loop, which can lead to depression and it can lead to burnout. I think that's what your sister is talking about. I think that's what we talked about at like Nona when I met her.
Yeah, she was, yep.
So it's a way, it's a way that, and everybody has a tendency to do it, but it stems from a lot of the comparison, a lot of ego. We all have ego, and whether we have a large ego or a very limited ego. A lot of times when you have someone who has very little self-esteem, very little ego, they are much more reactive, much more responsive, can blow up a little bit faster. So depending on which end of the pendulum you're on, that triangle can get going pretty quickly, like a hamster on a wheel. But if you recognize it, you can stop it. And nobody is exempt from it.
We all have ego. So you can't get around that.
Absolutely. And you need an ego. If we didn't have an ego, none of us were to survive, because we have to think about ourselves sometimes.
Yep.
And a lot of times that's where I have a lot of issue with saying yes to everyone, trying to be adaptive to everyone. And once I realized that was really holding me back from doing what I needed to do for me, that changed the game for me, because I realized that it's something that I'm wired to do. It's not that I choose to do it, I'm wired to do it. So you're able to change that. You're able to set healthy boundaries. Wow. And you're able to communicate with people in a way that they understand and is not attacking or is not defensive. And you can get along without agreeing, because you can understand where a person is coming from. That is what I hope happens through all of this. That is what I hope people get out of this. That is what I hope they get out of Hera. That's what I hope they get out of Hera City. That's what I hope. That's where I hope we're headed. I hope we're headed in that direction. It's touch and go every couple of weeks, but I hope that's where we're headed.
Carinda, keep up the great work that you're doing. I have no doubt that we will get there. There's enough people on this planet that want to see us have a great future for humanity and the planet. Yes. So I love who you are. I love who you're being. I love the work that you're doing. And I want to thank you today for this time that sharing with everybody the work that you're doing. Are you love to share your website? Can you tell us your website or the best way for people to contact you?
CarindaSalomon.com. And then we also have patternpoints.com. So they'll both be on my LinkedIn. I'll send you the information so you can get to. So yeah, it's Carinda Salomon, CarindaSalomon.com.
Perfect. Darling, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I'm in your world and that you gave us this time today to share everything that you're doing. It's great work. So everybody, thank you for joining us today. Everything will be in the Carinda's bio and information, so you can reach out to her. So thank you for joining us today. And if you also want more information on heracity.org or heramediagroup.com. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary.